I'm assuming you wrote talking when they shouldn't, moving when they shouldn't, not having their equipment, coming late, occasionally play fighting or fighting. How many I've had raping and pillaging? Very few. Yeah, that's normally the case. Very few, if any. It's normally relatively low level, continuous, repetitive. Anyone got anything different to that they'd like to share? Like, you know, knife attacks or... Yeah? Throwing furniture. Again. Throwing a piece of furniture at a teacher.
Yeah, no, but for female teachers, sexual innuendo from year 9 and 10.
Oh, yeah, sure. If it were continuous, I assume it is, then it's no different to breaking equipment. It has the same motivation. The impact's different, but when I get to the D's, I will talk about people's motivation. Anything designed to hurt you is designed to hurt. It doesn't matter if it hurts equipment, it's just going to hurt. So there'll be kids who are designed to hurt. They want to hurt. So that's why even restorative practices and some of those procedures will not work with those kids. They do work inadvertently. I'm having debates with a guy called Blair. They work, but for the wrong reasons. If you think it's the dialogue you have with such a kid, you know, you bring in a very challenging kid like that, and you sit them down, you say, now look, you're a great kid, but this sort of stuff is just not on. We've discussed the fact that people have a right to be comfortable. That includes your teachers. And when you say this sort of stuff, it makes people uncomfortable. Okay? You imagine if I said really horrible and hateful stuff about you or your mother. You know? It makes people uncomfortable. So, can you see that? And the kid will say, yeah. And then you'll have the person, even in restorative practice, I'll tell you how harmful it is to them and all that sort of stuff. And the kid will say, yeah. And inside, he's going, yeah. He now knows that this hurt. He's likely, theoretically, to do it again. The trouble is, he's being treated in a respectful way. And this is a problem for him because he thinks he's actually pretty hateable. So you're treating him as though he's not hateable, and you're creating some doubt that he's hateable. That doubt improves his behaviour. Not the dialogue. That's my debate with Blair. Not the dialogue. Because the dialogue, he hasn't got a working conscience of that level. It's the treatment of him as an adult that actually makes him improve, which is what we're saying here. With really difficult kids, you don't deal with the behaviour at all. You deal with the person. And if you can treat the person in a respectful way, they generally improve. But that's not what they get, as we just said. They get the opposite in most schools. The more difficult you are, the more damaging your treatment, really. The more attack on your self-concept it'll be. So it's paradoxical that some treatments look like they're working, but they're not working for the reasons they were designed to work. That's what I'm thinking of. I'm going to try and write something like this. But the last time I said anything nasty about restorative practices was 2.5 years ago, and I got 32 emails telling me off. But for some kids, I think, well, there's no process that works for everybody anyhow that I know of. It's unrealistic to think like that, but it certainly can't hurt them because they do improve under restorative practices. But I think it's just because we're refusing to hate them. And that's a very good thing. It's a very good start, you know. But you wouldn't have too many like that. My guess is if you've got 5% of really hard players, hurtful players, you'd have more than your fair share. Most of it is this repetitive low level, but it is repetitive. You don't know how to stop it. And you've tried everything. And now you're trying the same things that didn't work last time. So you're in a really difficult position. And I think that's part of what we've got to deal with. So the first thing is to acknowledge that most of the problems are minor. Now, it's so funny because you look at this and you look at these other countries and they've got the same level of misbehaviour and you think, what, China? Who are they kidding, you know? But it reminds me of one day I went, when Moreland was still alive, I was working with Moreland, and then I went from there to Ivanhoe Girls Grammar because they wanted a full day PD. And I went there and I said, you know, it was a bit of a culture shock. Why do you need a full day's PD in management? And they said, look, the girls are doing things that they've never done before. And I said, what are you talking about? Oh, and sometimes they go, no. That was it. And they were serious. And that's like China. China, you don't even have to say no. You just got to look out the window. If you I was at a conference in March. If you daydream, it's misbehaviour. And it's worth yelling at you too. And I will yell at you if you daydream because you're not connecting to me and I'm your parent and parentis. You know, I mean, I'm here. You've got to connect with me. So if you daydream, I might yell at you or use sarcasm or something horrible. Because it is misbehaviour. So when you see misbehaviour, it's not the same in every school, but in most Australian schools it's low-level stuff. So when we get to the technique-y stuff, which will start next week, it's all based around the knowledge that it's really mainly low-level stuff, very small percentage, and we have to deal with the harder stuff, the Ds, but that comes later, and it's more important to their lives, by the way, in some ways. But even a person who's just repetitively calling out, if they're repetitively calling out, they have the same problems as a kid who burns down schools, according to some theories. They don't like themselves enough. And we're going to have to deal with that because if you use rewards and punishments, it won't work. And even if you use the relationship, they can't help themselves. You would have to connect to them in a much stronger way, not a weaker way. And that's not what's going to happen intuitively, I'll tell you that. Not according to research. For example, if I looked at these techniques, have a quick look at these. These are the ones I've been studying. The reason I studied these is because they form the basis of just about every sort of package you can come up with. By the way, reward can be a smile, you know, or it can be a lolly. It doesn't matter what it is. A reward is simply a recognition. That doesn't belong to any model, it just happens. Okay, so that covers group processes models, behavioural models, humanistic models. It's all in there somewhere. Okay, so now let's look at what happens. Here's a study with about 6,000 secondary kids, and if you look at punishment, the kids were asked when this teacher does discipline. First of all, they asked how the teacher does discipline. How often do they use a whole bunch of techniques? And they fold into the 6 categories. And so if they're more likely to be using punishment than the teacher next door, then those kids are more likely to be distracted when the teacher does discipline, because they were the nature of the questions. So if you're the kind of teacher who does more discipline than more punishment than the person next door, the kids are more likely to be distracted in your class when you're doing discipline, whatever kind you're using at that moment. And they're more negative to you, but they don't see your justification as any different to the guy next door or the person next door. If you do discussion with them of the kind that we said there, you get them to see the impact their behaviour has on others, plan for a better future, etc., then if you're that kind of person, when you do discipline, which could even be punishment, at that time you're still less distracting, they're less negative and they're more justified. So discussion's a good thing, and that fits with your relationship power. That fits with your power analysis. Recognition fits with your reward analysis. It seems from their perception or their response that they react quite positively to people who reward. My guess is because you don't give things to people you hate, and the chances are by giving them things they may think you like them more. So it's really a de facto relationship as well, because they don't need your rewards. Let's get real. You know, you can't give them anything they can't steal. You know, so there's nothing you can do that's going to. So if you think about it, same with punishments. You can't even give punishments that hurt. So the rewards and punishments per se are not what carry. It's either you are disappointed in them as a person, and that's what they're reading, or you like them as a person, or pleased, or proud of them, whatever. So, but that's the technique. Aggression has no benefit, so this business of let's feign getting really angry and see if that works, you can forget that. And involvement, interestingly enough, only affects justify, but that does make sense, because if they've been involved in the rule setting and so on, then they see you as being more justified when you act. So that were 3 things we looked at. So it's starting to back up. By the way, that took a lot of work. It's not so simple. But we're starting to back up that power analysis. And hinting. Hinting, I guess, because you're putting it out there for everyone to work with, so that when you finally do act, they see you as more justified. So a teacher who says, look, there's an awful lot of noise in the class, I'm worried that some people can't hear, and then goes on